Welcome to Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. I'll be covering every studio song the band has recorded and every bonus track that I can find. Each week we'll go over a new song from the beginning to where they are currently, and as they keep adding albums, I'll keep adding shows. Let the deep dive party begin.
In the magic garden, some were singing, some were dancing.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast, a fan-based podcast. That's me, I'm the fan, and it's endorsed by the band Uriah Heep because we're doing all the music of Uriah Heep. I said in the beginning that I was going to do one song a week, and now I'm doing like 4 a week, so I got to change that intro still. But this episode is a little bit different because I have a special guest. Now, I'm your host, coming to you from the somewhat barren streets of Las Vegas, and my co-host is...
Coming to you from the suburbs of Providence, your guest host, John Two Scoops Mottola from the Deep Purple Podcast.
Yes! I love that show. I really do. You guys have been going at it for, you're coming up on 2 years, aren't you?
Yeah, 2 years, I think, in March or April, I think.
Yeah, you're hitting 100 episodes coming up before too much longer. You're doing 91, I think, coming up this week. And man, it's the show's just gotten better and better. Are you still enjoying it as much as you did in the beginning?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, getting to record an episode a week or sometimes two, with one of your best friends is always a lot of fun, especially these days. What's really gotten us through the past year is just being able to sit down for a couple of hours and just talk about our favorite albums or talk about our favorite musicians and just kind of forget everything that's happening now. So it's been a great outlet, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I have to agree, and I've really enjoyed working with the Deep Dive Podcast Network since I started this show. And just listening to the other, our brothers, their shows, it's really been something that's kind of helped me get through some of those, like, oh my God, when are things going to go back to normal kind of moments?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
So you're fairly new to Uriah Heep. You knew who the band was, but you're just kind of starting to get into them now. What is your impression 3 albums in?
I have to say that this band is definitely. I can't pin them. I can't pinpoint them down. Like, they're definitely a classic band, and they have a classic rock band, and have all those elements. But it's like not even every album, but almost like every song. I never know what to expect. It's like they're so diverse and so different, and I'm actually really enjoying it, and I'm kind of looking forward to, as you were speaking about in previous episodes, when they kind of hit their stride, and which I believe will be, the album or the song from the album that we're going to review, when they kind of get a more cohesive sound or recognizable sound. But I think they're really good.
I'm glad. It's they're one of those bands that, like, once you take the first bite, you want the whole plate. And if you happen to get introduced to a song that really grips you, something that you just are like, wow, this blows me out of the water, then you want everything. Then you got to go back through the whole history. And having 50 years of history, that's going to take a minute to get through.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Of course, Deep Purple's been around since, 68? So just a couple years older. And, you've got plenty of history there. And, of course, with all the offshoots of Deep Purple with Whitesnake and Rainbow and that, it's just endless, the sea of reach that band has had. With Uriah Heep, obviously they've got some crossovers with Ozzy Osbourne and some other bands, and then a lot of solo albums over the years. But man, it's just a sea of great music, and that's, for me, I'll never tire of listening to good music.
Oh yeah, I think that's one of the things about them that's so interesting, is they're definitely like a prog band. Because just very casually, a prog, like a classic band, because it's just very casually, it's like, all right, here's like a 15, 20-minute song or whatever. And then there's like a 5-minute song. But I mean, they've had a lot of like, or I feel like already a lot of epically long songs. But I mean, it's all stuff where I'm just like, wow, like this is not your typical 3-chord rock band. Like, these guys are easily on the same level as Deep Purple and many other accomplished bands. They're just really skilled, really great songwriters, performers.
I would agree. And it's funny when people talk about the top three bands in history, they always talk about Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, and Deep Purple. But when they talk about the top four bands, then Uriah Heep is added. And, I think they're just as good as any of those other bands, to be honest. I think there might have been a little less media exposure maybe that didn't give them the opportunity that the other bands had. I'm not sure what it was. But obviously, they've sustained a very good career over the last, half a century. I'm just glad that they stuck together, that they made the music that they have and continue to do it today. I think some of the bands like, Alice Cooper, Deep Purple, Uriah Heep, they're making some of the best music that they've ever made after 50 years of experience. I think it's pretty amazing the stuff that these guys are turning out now.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that you hit on something before. I think that there are a lot of bands. I can't remember where I heard it from, but it was a discussion, maybe with a friend or on another podcast about why didn't this band become bigger? And I think, like you said, a lot of it, could be management. It could be the way that they were marketed. Nate and I have talked a lot about it on our show, like certain albums, like why wasn't this bigger? And then we would, talk it out and be like, well, maybe, the time wasn't right, or maybe they didn't promote it enough, or there wasn't enough backing behind it, or maybe the album cover wasn't, they didn't put enough, who knows? It could have been a million different things. I mean, even in the beginning, like Deep Purple, like they, in their home country, they couldn't even make it. They had to go to America to get any traction. And then when we went back to England, and nobody would even pay attention to them at first.
Yeah, that's very true.
And who even knows why,
Right. And the other thing too, though, is that Heep gets invited to a lot of the big festivals. So it's not like they're not a known band. I think they're not as known either. It's in America or in just the circles of people that I know that are fans of that era, haven't necessarily given them the chance. If they were a band like King Crimson, who was really out there with their music, I could understand, maybe people not quite catching on to what they were doing. Even Emerson, Lake and Palmer was pretty adventurous. But Uriah Heep had some adventurous stuff, but they had so many just straightforward, great rock and roll songs that, at least as far as the charts go, I've not seen a lot of listings for them as opposed to some of the other bands. But I think they're on equal footing as far as I'm concerned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, it could be because maybe they didn't have that that one breakout, kind of radio accessible hit, as much as, say, Smoke on the Water or Stairway to Heaven, Paranoid, just name whichever song. And even though the one that we're going to talk about today, I think it was their first hit, right?
I think Lady in Black was actually the first one that got some real traction, although that might have happened after Easy Livin'. I'm not sure. Okay.
But, I mean, either way, it's it's like I said, there's no accounting for the tastes of the public, for whatever reason. Certain bands are, like you said, this band is known, but maybe it's because they were so different or ahead of their time that it just didn't, gel the same way with, as many people. But, luckily they were able to endure and, make, 25 albums?
Yeah, I think the 25th is the one that they're working on now. But, and so much of it is luck, too, because even Deep Purple would not have had a hit with Smoke on the Water had somebody at Warner Brothers not said, you know what, let me cut this down into a smaller version and see what we can do with it, cut it down to something that was radio playable, and all of a sudden you've got a hit. That had nothing to do with the band. They didn't even think it was a good song. They're like, yeah, we've got room on the album. Let's just throw that thing on there we recorded. And the next thing you know, it's like one of their most successful songs. So there's so much luck involved in this business too. And I've heard Roger Glover talk about that from time to time. He said part of it was just the time we were in. part of it was just the thing that we happened to catch on to. And it's so much harder now because there's so much available to listen to. It's really hard to cut through. But back then you had to have a lot of the right promotion because we didn't have the internet. We didn't have easy ways for you to find out about new bands. You're not going to go to the record store with your 25 cents a week that you're getting and spend $7 or $8 on an album from a band you've never heard of. So it's different times, but I would think it was just as challenging back then to get known as it is now, just a different way. Yeah. Well, before we start the song, I'll tell you the story that I read about how it was created. I have to take everything that I read with a grain of salt because unless I get it from the actual source, there seems to be varying versions and contradicting versions and things out there. But what I heard was that Ken Hensley and David Byron were in a taxi cab and they were talking about how people think that just because they're somewhat successful musicians that they have a really easy life. You just go to work for a couple hours a night and you don't really have to do anything else. And, not taking into account all the interviews and being on the road and being away from your family and how hard it is to work that 2 hours and that sort of thing. And so that's kind of where the idea of the story came about. And the song was actually written supposedly in a half an hour.
Wow.
So they say a lot of times that some of the best songs are ones that you just do. You don't overthink it. You don't overproduce it. You just come up with it and leave it as it was.
Yeah, I was going to say that's what I've heard a lot of those stories is that some of the best songs are like the ones that come really quick, the ones that you don't really labor over and change a lot of things and overthink it. Yeah,
absolutely. Now, the last thing that I wanted to tell you about, and I'm not going to show it while we're doing the thing because this is an audio podcast, but I'll put the link in the show notes. There is a really cool video of a nice young lady who is listening to Easy Livin' for the very first time, and it's a YouTube reaction video. I really like these. I like kind of going back in my memory to when the song was new to me, and I love seeing people getting excited about songs, especially younger people, because this isn't the music of their generation like it was for us growing up. You've seen some of these videos too, John. I don't know if you've seen that one specifically, but you've seen like some of these reaction videos.
Yeah, they're a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. Does it kind of bring you back a little bit in a nostalgic way to that time when you first heard it?
I think for me, it's more like I get excited seeing younger fans like reacting to music that I think is cool and just being like, yeah, that's it. You get it. I don't know if it brings me back because like in the same way that it does for you, I think it makes me happy that a younger generation can appreciate it, or somebody that previously didn't know about this can be like, yeah, this is good stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I like when like vocal coaches will review a song like Child in Time or something that has like a really powerful vocal to it. Those are fun for me too, because those are people that are going to be extra critical of, well, that's really easy. You just do this or you just do that. And they're like, wow.
Yeah, I've seen a few of those too. Those are pretty cool.
Yeah, it's good stuff. So I'll have that link for you guys in the show notes. But now I think we should, you ready to check out this wonderful little song of Uriah Heep's?
Definitely.
All right, let's do it. Here is Easy Livin' with, a bunch of stops for me so we can talk about it. All right, that was good. What do you think of that first section there?
It immediately got me hooked because it's like I just love that really. I want to say it's a really overdriven guitar tone. It's just really heavy and driving, and you just have the keyboards in the background just kind of doing something a little melodic, but it's still really heavy. One of the things that I thought about is that it kind of reminds me of a little bit of a sped up version of Demon's Eye by Deep Purple.
Mm. Yeah.
Because it has that same kind of like, yeah, exactly. It's got that same kind of rhythm to it, but a little faster. So So I think that's why I like it.
Yeah, definitely. It really, like, it just drives right from the beginning. And when I had Russell Gilbrook on the Haskincast podcast, I interviewed him in, I think it was September or October. And we were talking about this song because this was actually the song that kind of won him the audition to be in the band. Most of the drummers were playing it wrong because most drummers will play a shuffle as like a double hit on the hi-hat and one hit on the snare. But this is actually the snare doubles with the hi-hat. So it's called a double shuffle. And I'll have to do a drum video and do like a visual, representation of what it looks like. But it's played a little bit differently than most shuffles are, and it's a little bit of a workout for the drummer because your right hand, or if you're a right-handed drummer, does not get the rest that it normally does, and but it drives the song a little bit more, I think, and it's just an interesting way of playing it. But I love the sound of it because the snare isn't too hard. It's a little gentler of a snare because you're not hitting it one time hard, you're hitting it twice a little lighter. So it's an interesting piece. Yeah, I love the way it just kicks right in, and there's like no warm up. It's just, hey, we're here, we're playing a song. Let's go. Yep. Well, let's see what happens next, because I think we're going to get into some vocals.
This is a thing I've never known before. It's called easy living. This is a place I've never seen before, and I've been forgiven. Easy living, and I've been forgiven since you've taken your place in my heart.
I love that. The vocals just sound so good. It's a great mix.
Yeah, that's one of the first things that I thought of, especially after hearing the previous Uriah Heep, is that I would say David Byron sounds like much different in this song than he has previously. Like I know that I've commented to you when we've texted about other things that other songs that his vocals have been very like dry, meaning like no effects on them, just very plain and everything. You can tell that they're really thickened up here, and it sounds really, really good. It's like, it almost doesn't sound like, I was wondering if somebody else sang it, because it's like, maybe he's singing a different style, or, maybe it's the way the song is produced, but it's just like everything about it is just really strong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've often wondered if it's Ken Hensley singing it, because it sounds a little more nasally, and he's slightly more nasal than David Byron, but in some tones, they're almost interchangeable. I know there's a lot of experts that are going to write in and say, no, they're not, and here's why. But I find their voices are very similar, to the point where there's times when I didn't realize it was Ken Hensley singing a song because of the way that, the way that it was sung. But in this case, I think the vocals might be double tracked, and that might be why they sound as thick as they do. But you're right. I've noticed that too, where they'll put almost no reverb on David Byron, and then all of a sudden there'll be just like an immense amount of reverb, and then back to no reverb again. It's really interesting the way that they were mixing in that sort of transitory time between 60s pop and 70s rock. And just kind of going, how do we do this and make it sound as good as we can? And there's a lot of experimentation done in this time. I think by the time Demons and Wizards rolled around, I think they were kind of getting a good grip on how they wanted it to sound, though.
Yeah, I was going to say, this sounds like they had found that sweet spot. It went out from that kind of experimental, like from the old school, from the 60s, into like, okay, now we know how to produce like a heavy rock band.
Yeah, and I think they realized that they didn't have to hard pan everything in one direction or another to get it to cut through. They could merge them a little bit more towards the middle and make it sound good, because those older albums, it's like some of the guitars are way off to the left and the keyboards are way off to the right. And I think that's part of why people get a little disconnected with the music, is just because it wasn't mixed in a way they're familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
Even some of the old Beatles stuff throws me off sometimes when I listen to it, because it's so mono, it's almost annoying. Okay, so let's get back into the song here and see what happens next.
Somewhere along the lonely road, I had tried to find ya. Day after day on that windy road, I had walked behind ya. Easy living, and
I love those backups in the chorus.
You got a lot going on here because it's also like just commenting again on the production is like it's great because you can hear all these different elements in the song, and it's not like, you know, they brick walled it, you know, it's not just this one, you know, wall of sound. And you know, you finally get you know, Byron's kind of backup vocals, you know, put to really good effect in the background, you know, being like a layer of sound in the background, along with you know, Ken Hensley's organ, and you know, Gary Thain doing all this, you know, great stuff on the bass. Like you know, he's you know, going along, and then all of a sudden he's you know, going up, and he's doing some really melodic stuff, and then you have Lee Kerslake in the background just holding down that double shuffle like you were talking about, and you know, Mick Box just cranking it out with this overdriven tone, which I really love. I almost thought it was like an organ, like that guitar tone almost sounded like, you know, when John Lord would do a really heavy organ in Deep Purple, and that's like when I was younger, I was like struggling to figure out like, is that a guitar? Like because it was so heavy, but in a good way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a rich, full sound in this song, and I really like that. And you know, you're right. I haven't even mentioned Gary Thain. I've said it on, I think, every show so far since I've been working with Demons and Wizards. But he really carried on the style of bass that Paul Newton set up for the sound of Uriah Heep. And you know, it's amazing to hear bass that's not just, you know, the root notes or, you know, switching back between quarter and eighth notes, just really something that is moving along with the song. And everybody's playing in a way that their parts are interesting, but not distracting from the song. I like that Lee Kerslake is kind of laying back and not putting fills everywhere, just really letting the vocals shine where they need to, but keeping that solid foundation. It's just a straight power song. All right, so let's see what happens next. Killer. Just killer. Nice introduction to the tubular bells there, which was really unexpected.
Yeah, which like previously I didn't hear that before. I just heard that, like hearing it in headphones. I was like, I picked up on that right away.
Well, that's one of the things that I actually like about working with these remastered versions is that I have heard some things that I didn't notice before. Of course, it could be the headphones, you know, that I'm using too have a big part of that. But these are really good, clear mixes, and I love that because it's subtle, but it has its impact, you know. And I love what Gary Thain was playing on bass through that part, especially towards the end. It just really grooves with the song, you know. And of course, you know, you got to have that classic Uriah Heep vocal harmony in there too. You wouldn't have a song without that, especially a rocker.
Yeah, and one thing that I noticed too about this section is that it's like it's a bridge, like that middle part of the song, but it doesn't change tempo. Like they're still driving along. Like Lee Kerslake is still doing the same thing on the drums. He doesn't change it, but I don't think he needs to, you know. But I mean, the tone of the song changes a little bit, but but if you pay attention to it, it stays the same, and it's simple, but it's effective.
Yeah, it's a very steady train. Like once the train is going, it just stays on that path the whole time. And I kind of like that because being that it's a shorter song, I mean, the song's only 2 minutes and 38 seconds. So being that it's a shorter song, I don't think that you would really have as much room unless you made it a longer song, you know, and then went into different parts like they might do on other songs. But I like the fact that it's just a short, fast ride and it's steady the whole time. I think that's part of what makes this song work.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm just going to play that part again because I want you guys to listen to the bass, what the bass guitar is doing
so
through
good.
there. It's just such a, like, I kind of want to rock back and forth from side to side when I hear that part come up.
Somewhere along the lonely road I had tried to find you. Day after day on that windy road I had walked right behind you. Easy living, and I've been forgiven since you taken your place in my heart.
Now, what do you think when you hear a repeated chorus and you hear them do something different, just like a little extra line thrown in or something sung a little bit a different way? Do you get excited that it's different from the last chorus, or do you get like, I was ready to hear and sing along with what I'm used to?
Toward the end of the song, I always think that it's kind of cool because it makes you feel like, they improvised it, or they're, kind of like, it makes it feel more live, I guess. Which, if this song was, written and recorded really quickly, then that would make sense, because it's almost like it's less scripted. It's like, I threw this thing in during this take and we just left it.
Yeah, and I think too that it's nice to know that everything wasn't sort of copy and paste. Like, well, this is how the chorus goes, so this is how we do it. It's like, this is what I felt in that moment, and I just said it, and it sounded good, so we kept it.
Right.
The other example I can think of, I remember listening to an interview with Joe Lynn Turner when they were recording Straight Between the Eyes, and he was talking about at the end of Stone Cold when he threw in the words ice cold, and he was just like, that was just an improv, like that wasn't planned, and but I like that. I like when things feel natural and in the moment, and you can kind of feel like you were there with them in that moment when you get little presence like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great. Beautiful.
Unbelievably, we're almost done with this song.
Wow.
It's like we haven't even reviewed anything yet.
Yeah.
So let's hear the next section.
Easy living, and I've been forgiven since you taken your place in my heart.
Powerful ending.
That's one of the things that I noticed when I listened to the ending is that it seems really kind of simple, but it's not. Like, they could have ended it a different way, but I like how they ended it on like that higher note. They went bump bump, almost like it was like operatic or orchestral or something. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, and it was also very sudden too. It was just like, it was very like, it was a quick ending, but it was just like, instead of like, ending like da, just like hitting a chord, or just like, they went up like a step or a half a step or whatever it was, and that little difference actually is kind of cool. It's one of those things that we were talking about, like one of those little nuggets in there that's just like, that's different, that makes the ending like kind of not typical, I think.
Well, and you kind of expect that the ending is going to go down. It's going to go da da, because we're kind of conditioned for that to be an ending. So yeah, you're right. For that to go up instead is great. It follows along with that progression that they've been playing throughout the song as well. And but it's just, I'm really glad they didn't fade it. I don't think that this song would have been suited well to a fade. I like that it was just a powerful opening, a powerful ending, powerful all the way through, and done.
Yeah. Just like in and out, bang.
Yeah, exactly. I had teased a contest that I was going to do for this song. So now I've told you what the contest is. Do you think that that's a fair question to ask? I mean, you got it pretty quick. Yeah,
I think so. I think it's fair.
Okay, then I'll tell you what happened. I ordered a copy of the Deluxe Equator CD, and it arrived yesterday, and it's not the Deluxe Equator CD as it was labeled. And I talked to the person that sent it to me, and they do not have the deluxe one. They said they apologized profusely, said it must have been mislabeled. And I said, you know what? That's all right. I'll keep it. I'll just give it away in a contest. So for a copy of the studio version of Uriah Heep's Equator CD, which I have near me, which means nothing to you while you're listening, the trivia question for this one is, most rock hits have something in particular. In fact, almost one of the things that makes it a hit. And this song does not have that thing. What is the thing that it is missing? Write me at uriahheeppodcast@gmail.com. And the first one that writes me in with the correct answer will get a copy of Uriah Heep's Equator CD mailed to them. So there you have it. Hopefully this contest will go better than the last one, which no one entered.
Oh, man.
I tried. I don't know. I might have made it too complex. So hopefully this is a little more simple, and someone will dig it. But it's a great song. I'm really glad you came on to review it with me. It's just power from beginning to end.
Yeah, and I mean those are some of my favorite songs. I mean, if we were on the Deep Purple podcast, 5, I'd give it a 5.
Yeah. What would you give it? Let's see. We got to, because you guys have this wonderful, 5 pilgrim hats, 5 belt buckles. What can we do? 5 wizard wands?
Yeah, 5 wizard wands. I think, yeah, we kind of stopped doing that a little bit, but then we got a little feedback that they wanted it back. So we were trying here and there, I think some people enjoyed that.
It is one of those things that makes the show a little bit more. It's like one of those gems, one of those little nuggets that we were talking about. It just adds a little more spice to it. I think we'll go with Wizard Wands. I would also give it 5. I don't think there's anything I would want differently in this song. Even the thing that the song is missing, that the contest is about, I really go back and forth between whether I feel this way because I know the song so well as it is. I mean, I've been listening to it for 30 plus years. Do you think that the reason that I wouldn't want anything different is because of that fact that I'm so used to the song, or do you really think it doesn't need anything different?
I think it's a little bit of both, because I mean, I haven't been hearing this song for as long as you have, or I'm, as familiar with it. But I think that both are valid, that it so well that you don't want it to change. But I mean, just even listening to it now, I'm just like, God, what more could you possibly need in this song? It just it comes in, it hits you across the head, and then they're just like, see ya, and then they leave, and that's just like the best kind of song. I don't think it doesn't need a solo. It doesn't need anything, a remastering. I don't know. You know what I mean? I think it's great the way it is. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great mix. It really is. And I've seen them live twice in the last 3 years, and it's amazing that this song was done in, I think this was 1972. So all these years later, they're still playing it with as much energy and as much enthusiasm as you hear in this recording. And I love that. I love that you can just go out there and do songs that you've done so many times and you've heard so many times and you've talked about in so many interviews, and be like, hey, we're going to do Easy Livin', and just get that excited about it and perform it brilliantly. I love that. I don't know that I could do that. I'd like to think I could. I'd like to be in a position to prove to myself whether I could or not. Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, you're a musician. How do you think you would handle that?
I don't know. I mean, it's hard to tell how I would react to having to play, something over and over again for 50 plus years. Would I get tired of it or not? But I think it might be like muscle memory almost. You just kind of go into it, and I don't know. I mean, I think that if there's something that you do like that, a routine or a job or whatever that's easy for you, or enjoyable or whatever, then it's not a chore. And who knows? There might be some nights that they go out there and they're like, oh, I don't want to play Easy Livin' tonight, or maybe they don't want to play anything tonight. We all have those days, but
Sure.
overall, I think that, if it's, the songs that they're picking to play are fan favorites or hits for a reason. And, you would hope that, you would enjoy playing those. So, but again, it's hard to say, like, when I get sick of the same thing over and over for 50 years or, whatever the time span is, I don't know, maybe. But, to hear that they come out and do it with as much, energy and passion now is like, and I mean, a lot of it too is like, it's not all the same musicians. The same version of the band. So maybe some of these other guys are just like, they have like a renewed passion for it, or they have a newer feel for it. It's not as ingrained in them. Although I don't know how long the current incarnation of the group has been together, but that's what I would think.
Bernie Shaw's been singing for, I think it's 30 years now in the band.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But I would have to think too, there's an element of, as soon as you start the song and the crowd just goes nuts, there has to be an element of that being like, all right, yeah, okay, I'll do it. And you kind of get over that. Oh God, we got to do this song again. I don't feel it tonight. And then, the crowd just kicks in and you're like, all right, it makes you happy.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like that's an element that maybe I forgot too. Is like if you're feeding off the energy of the crowd, and it's going to be a different crowd every night, then that also drives you to enjoy what you're doing. Or I would like to think it would.
Yeah, I would think they would have to play some role in it, and at least if you don't want to play it, it's a short enough song where you can get through it fairly quickly. You're not doing a 7 or 8 minute song that you don't want to do. It's 2.5 minutes and you're done and on to the next one. But it's definitely, to me, one of the great rock songs of history.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, John, let me ask you one more question. So this still being a fairly new band to you, thinking about ahead to maybe later 2021 or even early 2022, if they come to Providence, would you go see them?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Cool. Yeah, they're definitely an amazing live band.
Well, yeah, I mean, based on your recommendation of them as a live band, first of all, and then of course, like if I didn't go see them, then I think you'd be mad at me because I'd have to report. I'd have to report back if I liked them or not. But I mean, just
right.
But knowing what I know about them now, knowing more of the back catalog and just loving to see live music. And I'm why wouldn't I go see them? Plus, I'm sure that they would be, on a bill with somebody else that would be worth seeing as well. So,
well, Mick Box does an Ask Mick thing where you can write into him at the website and you ask him a question, and he might read it on his YouTube channel. And it's Uriah Heep's YouTube channel because Phil Anson does some videos on there too. And somebody asked him if they would consider, when this pandemic is over, doing a tour with Whitesnake, which would be an obvious, Deep Purple tie-in. But I would love to see that, Bill.
Oh, I'd see that in a second. Absolutely.
I would be curious who would headline, or if they would do like a dual headline show. I don't really think one has anything over the other one. I think a dual headline would be in order for that tour.
Yeah, either way, I think it would be a killer bill.
Mm-hmm, for sure. I'd like to see Deep Purple, Whitesnake, and Uriah Heep on the same bill. I think that would be like the ultimate show for me.
Wow. Yeah, that would be something else. I mean, because you're really talking all the same era of music. Especially anybody that's listening to us now knows that Whitesnake is not just the Whitesnake from the 80s. As we've talked about, me and Nate a bunch of times, is like that, their history totally fits in with this style of music.
And if you stopped listening to Whitesnake after the Slide It In album, they are not the same band as that anymore. They are way more screechy, heavy guitars and real hair metal, I think, is what the music sounds like to me. It's really guitar aggressive, as opposed to just really nice rhythmic guitars that they had up to slide it in, and then all of a sudden it just kind of went into overdrive. But still good stuff, just a different sound, different members of the band, different influences and all that. Still a great band. So if I have a vote, I know Mick Box was interested. He said he would be interested in that. So you never know, it might happen. And if it were to happen, I think an American tour would be likely. So we'll see, but fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, that would be
awesome.
awesome.
So, John, I'm going to tell everybody they need to listen to the Deep Purple podcast. It's a great show. It's honestly, it's my favorite podcast, even more than the ones I do, because that's just me rambling around. But where can they find you guys? What's the best places to reach you?
So we're on all of the major places where you find podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify, all those. We're on YouTube. We do an audio feed as well. So if you're not into just the audio and you want to see the video as well, you can catch it on YouTube. Sometimes we get flagged for using songs, so we'll upload it to a alternate site, which we always link in the show notes or somewhere. And we're also very active on Twitter and Instagram, so you can find us there as well as the website deeppurplepodcast.com, where you can just kind of see the week by week. Nate puts all of the shows and the show notes in there as well. So many ways to find us and interact with us.
Excellent. And I will put all the links that I know of in the show notes too, so you guys can just click on it. Also, if you go to, actually, I think I have the link to your website is already in the show notes, because I've got everybody that's in the Deep Dive Podcast Network. And if you guys haven't checked it out yet, our friend Terry T-Bone Mathley has started his new show, and it is fantastic. I listened to his first episode today. Great interview, really knowledgeable, well-researched, energetic. You just felt like you knew these guys, and you were just sitting at a table having a beer and listening to them talk. It was really cool. So check that out. That link is also in the show notes. And thank you so much, John, for coming back. I hope you'll come back and do some more songs for us.
Oh, I'd love to. Thank you for having me. I'm really grateful that you had me on. I really appreciate it. I had a lot of fun.
Thank you. Me too. And, we haven't talked about it, but I will say that you guys may specifically want to tune into the Deep Purple podcast this week. The show comes out Sunday night, and it might be one of particular interest to listeners of this podcast. And I'll leave it at that.
Nice tease. Nice teaser.
Thank you, John. Thank you guys for listening to Uriah Heep, the Magicians Podcast. I will be back tomorrow with another episode, and this time we will be reviewing one of my absolute favorite Uriah Heep songs, Poet's Justice. Just to give you a quick overview, if you guys haven't been watching Ask Mick on YouTube, he actually recently reviewed my question about this. So what happened was I sent in a question to ask Mick, and it was about the song Poet's Justice, just if he had any thoughts on it or anything. And it was right after that where I found out where to reach out to his management. So within 5 minutes of me sending him that question, I had sent a message to his manager to do an interview to promote the box set and all that. And, within a day or hours, I think it was, I got a response from the management. They're like, hey, if you could be on the phone at this time, Mick can. I'm like, great. So when I talked to Mick, I said, oh, by the way, I sent you in a question to ask Mick. And when you get to it, you don't have to do it now. And he actually did it anyway, which I thought was great. So there is, I think it's episode 81, I think, is the one on Poet's Justice. But great song. I'm looking forward to covering that tomorrow. John, thank you guys. Thank you guys, because Nate's not here. Thank you so much for coming on the show. We're definitely looking forward to having you back. And good luck with the Deep Purple podcast. It seems to be a freight train of its own.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You bet. You take care, my friend.
All right, you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of Uriah Heep, the Magicians Podcast. If you have enjoyed this show, please consider going over to Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast outlet, leaving a rating or a review. Be sure to subscribe to make sure that you are notified when new episodes are available. Please be sure to share this podcast with your fellow Uriah Heep enthusiasts and anyone who you think would like Uriah Heep, which should be everyone. And if you are so inclined, please feel free to contribute to the Patreon account. And if you are not a Patreon subscriber, you can also pay through the PayPal link on the website listed in the show links below. I would also like to thank Uriah Heep for their very generous support of the show, and thank you guys for listening. We'll see you in the next episode. Happy days!